Okay, so Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to this Q&A session. It's supposed to be a Q&A session, right? But I'm assuming there's going to be more questions than answers.
Okay, walaikum salam. I just want to reply to you before you carry on talking. Yeah, I don't know. You wanted it to be a Q&A.
Yes, I see.
Just be a discussion between us.
Dineo, if I got that pronunciation correct, is now joining us as well. She's connecting to audio, so hopefully she can join us and we can get started. And like I said before, we keep this completely informal. We don't do formal lectures and anything else. We have interesting discussions. And you guys try and paint me into a corner. Assalamu alaikum. Dineo, your microphone is on mute.
Which you're very good at scaring out of. So
Dineo, did I pronounce it correctly?
Yeah, you did. I'm just trying to sort myself out here.
Okay, no problem. As before, this is going to be in a similar format to what we did on Saturday last week here for the Gender Wars event. And we really just want to be able to focus in on one or two issues that we couldn't do justice to at the event itself, and the kind of things that people have mentioned since then about what it is that they would like to get more information about. So from that perspective, I think one of the biggest things that keeps coming up, and I think Hana has got this question ready for me, locked and loaded, is that apparently I didn't quite respond to the question about why it is that men appear to be intimidated or uncomfortable around a successful woman.
Yeah. So, you know that with my stance on social media, I actually came onto social media to talk about, the experiences of women and highlight all of the things that, and I was completely oblivious of these things until I was obviously put in a position where I went through certain things in my life. And so I took to social media to highlight those things because I was experiencing that. But the backlash that I would receive from men was like almost like an attack. I'm not sure if it was you need to keep quiet, or was it why do you only speak for women? That was the one thing that I found men just didn't appreciate when it came to us talking about our experiences. And another thing I've noticed in all of this is that whenever there is a strong woman in spaces, social media, and wherever, there's always the men. I don't want to use negative words, but I'm going to say he's projecting some sort of negativity on this woman because it's like an independent woman, a strong woman is seen as problematic in society. And why I say problematic is because it's like, I don't know, it's like if she's earning her own money, if she's going out to work and she has a career, if she's in a position where she doesn't need a man financially, she's just seen as problematic. So I want to know, why is it, on the whole, when we talk about gender wars, why is it that we're seeing such a massive gap between men and women and the way we're communicating with each other presently? And why is it that we are just not getting along as we should? And you know that the roles of, we see that roles are changing. We know that times have changed, and I think Dineo said this very in the event, that we are living in utopian times where women are forced to work. It's not a matter anymore of a choice, or women are forced to work. I strongly, even as an Islamic educator, I strongly advocate for my students that they need to get independent, they need to get educated, they must form some sort of independence for themselves. And it's never that, do that so that you don't need a man. It's never on that narrative. But why do men perceive it? Why is this always this contention when we trying to make women independent? Men take it as you toxic to society, and you are doing this, and you're leading the youth as well as the women to believe that you don't need us. Why?
Okay, well, I think there's a couple of things there. The one is that the narrative that says that you don't need a man, that's largely coming from women rather than men saying that women should be that way or that they're positioning themselves that way. Women, in their response to bad experiences with men, generally encourage each other to pull themselves up so that they're independent of a man, so they're not susceptible to that kind of treatment or abuse or whatever behavior they're to go through in their last relationship, right? That's the one thing. The other thing is that the whole issue of what the source is critical. I think when we ask questions like, when we make statements like that, it reflects more about what it is that the person feels about their ability to deal with the changing narrative and the changing social norms, rather than whether or not that is actually toxic and problematic and unhelpful and all of those things. So the moment we start attaching labels, you know me, labels are just a distraction. So labels are for products. I'll say that repeatedly. It's for products. You can label something because you do not deal with it itself, so you have to box it. And then when you box it, then automatically you can hold that person accountable for behaving in the way that you boxed them. And that's the only purpose that labels serve. And this is across the board, right? So when men complain about a woman being problematic, then maybe they should consider that they're just looking at someone that's not an ideal partner for them. You can't, men shouldn't go out there expecting every woman to be willing to like conform to what it is that their ideal of a woman is supposed to be.
100%. And I think I saw a post earlier and I thought that was such a healthy way to put that out. It's that let's accept the fact that everyone has their own ideals and their own preferences, and not everyone is supposed to conform to what we prefer in a spouse or a significant other. So it's just that I feel that if we see someone that doesn't conform, let us just move along. I just feel that there's just a lot of toxicity, and then this is probably where we come in and we highlight the fact that mental health is so important. If we address this, and if we take care of ourselves, and if we look after our self-esteem, and we become more self-aware of our respective roles as well, we won't go out there perpetuating and imposing our insecurities on either men or women.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. Assalamu alaikum. And Zaid, I hope you're well, and I pray that this follow-up session is fruitful, and may we, whatever we say may benefit may we benefit each other and benefit anybody that is watching. I have to agree. I think with the advent of social media, I think some of these things become exacerbated because of the advent of social media and people putting out statements as if they are absolute truths, instead of just admitting that this is my personal preference. And depending on the popularity of the person who's posting something or making a particular statement, then an idea can spread out and be taken as an absolute truth instead of a preference. And I'm hearing the conversation about in particular men, and this is not all men, but it's just the ones that are now vocalizing this, might be intimidated by a so-called powerful woman or strong woman, and I'm putting them in these labels because then power and strength is still subjected to the person who's observing this or the person who labels themselves as that. But you'll find that in the topic of gender wars, still you'll find that in the communities that I'm exposed to, you'll find that sisters are complaining that there are men who are wanting to take on second, third, fourth wives when they have not fulfilled their monetary and financial obligations towards the first. Or you'll find that a brother is, looking to get married, and, the sisters are lamenting that you don't have XYZ, in place. How can you then say that you want a wife? Because there are very clear stipulations as to what your roles are as a man. So how is it that you're going to be able to fulfill those roles if you haven't, been able to establish yourself financially and, have some kind of stability. So there are so many conversations that are happening back and forth. And I think ultimately now they are all now being put into this box of, power, financial empowerment, that is stability, social status and whatnot. And we're forgetting the primal role of why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had thought to, not thought, but, bring us together as men and women in order to establish our societies, communities, grow and, be a means of comfort for one another, a means of garment for one another, etc. But now it's coming down to social status, money, etc. Both of these conversations, both of these thoughts seem to be clashing with each other. You don't have enough stability to take care of me. On the other hand, you have too much stability and financial empowerment, and they seem to be clashing, But this is the perspective from what I'm observing, and obviously that's why I'm saying that with social media, you become exposed to certain types of conversations depending on who your audience is.
Yeah.
I haven't so much, to be honest, I haven't really been exposed to the narrative of the strong, financially empowered woman that's being sort of pushed down and criticized for whatever. I know certain ideals that come from a person might be labeled as, oh, she's saying this because she's got money, or she's saying this because of her social status. But just the woman having that social status or money on its own is not particularly a problem. It becomes a problem when she voices out other, things that she might have noticed or displeasing towards not just this particular woman, but the collective, and a collective idea. And then it says, oh yeah, you should be saying that in any case because you have this and you have that and you are this, and taking away completely from the thing that the woman is lamenting about. And I think that's where, we have a problem of deflecting and projecting. So I think that's where we need to come back to the conversation of remove my exterior, remove whatever I have, remove the gender, and let's look at the actual problem. What am I actually complaining about? What is the issue? So that's the conversation that I think we should be having.
Yeah, like Zaid always says, it's the human experience. It's not that we should be focused on, and not just, okay, well, sometimes it's important that we do focus on, because I do get this a lot, where I say it's important where we highlight that women in particular are going through this, or men in particular are going through this. But at the end of the day, it's a human experience that we need to come together through and say, look, we're all struggling in certain things, but we definitely can find a collective thing that say and connect on both spectrums and say, I understand you, because whether you're a man, whether you're a woman, we both go through similar challenges in life. So let's come to an understanding. Is always fighting with each other and not understanding one another, because we're so focused on fault finding each other that I just find there's just no empathy and there's no understanding. And we'll go now back into the whole, and Zaid, you'll probably, I'll give you a chance to talk now. There's just so many things that branches off into all of this. You've got a society now where you'll find that marriage is no longer a priority, because why should I get married? Because there's no value anymore. A woman no longer has a value for a man. A man no longer has a value for why should I get married? I don't need to get married, and for whatever reasons a man doesn't want to get married, and we know the reasons why women don't want to get married. And then you have obviously the entire the entire LGBTQ agenda that's hitting our youth, and not just our youth also, but it's also hitting us as well. And then you have gender-based violence. There's just so much going on with this concept that you've brought about under the banner of gender wars. So which is, I think it's so imperative that we find an understanding and we talk about this.
Totally agree. And I mean, just as you guys have touched on already in a few short moments, exactly how pervasive this problem is about the misunderstanding and the disconnect between men and women, right? There's
May I say something?
Sorry?
May I say something before you continue?
Yes, you can. Otherwise, ideally, you should submit a message, but let us know what you want to contribute.
Yes. Okay, sure, no problem. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Walaikum
My name is
assalam.
Fatima.
Waalaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
My apologies. I was in the topic last week. However, due to circumstances, I didn't get fully the entire um, event that occurred. But based on the information you guys are sharing now, and with what Upper Farana said, that when we in a society where people are generally, we grow, what is marriage? When it comes to what is the hadith that we speak from a male and a female perspective. And when you look at it, coming into a marriage, people don't know and value what marriage is about. And I feel that the back to basics of where we need to stipulate what marriage is about in order for it to build better into the young generation who is seeing what marriage is about. And that's when you actually wonder, do I want to get married or not? Because the perception of marriage is like it is. You know what? It's not just about comfort, a home, clothing, da 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 da. To make a marriage, there's only one basis: to make sex halal.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the truth. Sex
That's what
is
it's come
marriage.
to. Yeah.
That is it. Marriage is not about food, clothing, whatever. It's only, I love you, I need sex, let's make it halal, let's get married. But all the other bases is not based on hadith. It's not based on, I am married now, so you need to provide for me.
Can I just interrupt you there? Maaf, just the one thing that I always maintain is problematic is the moment we start focusing our approach to these matters, even when we go through like the proposal process or courtship or whatever it is, that we use the basis of Sharia in some form or another about what it is that we should be expecting and things like that. And the reason why I find this problematic is because if you're looking to go into marriage because you need your rights and responsibilities acknowledged or respected, you're going into it for the wrong reasons, right? Because the whole point of marriage is about companionship. It's about being each other's garment, the coolness of each other's eyes. It's about creating a healthier ummah, all of those sorts of things. And rights and responsibilities, it has its place. But if that's your point of departure, then you're not yet at the right level of maturity to even consider marriage in the first place.
Yeah,
Can I just come in there for a moment?
A relationship is so much more than just we need to be fulfilling each other's rights, as in like, what is a husband's role in a marriage? It's so much more. You need to be established emotionally within yourself, mentally within yourself to have a relationship. So I think it's a lot more than just that. So even when we talk about it, like even if I have to go into class and I've got to talk about nikah and whatever it is, and I can talk about the importance of nikah, it's not in the kitabs. I can tell you now, it's not in the kitabs of the whole emotional aspect of what that relationship is supposed to be like, or how you should be treated, how you should be spoken to. It's not in the kitabs. So that's why that's why I work with you, Zaid. It's for me to get an understanding and to gain more knowledge, so that when I go into class, I can pass that on to my students. So it's we can't just take Islam these days on kitab value and say, look, this is how we need to live our lives. Like, just it doesn't work like that anymore.
Absolutely.
I think one of the
I don't base my teachings like that.
One of the things that I picked up when I came into Islam, and then learning and being in the environment of married people, is that there's in action you can see the emotional need for it, but when we're having conversations in whatever spaces, there's so much, it's so mechanical. The conversations are so mechanical and structure and purpose and this, that the nitty-gritties are rarely ever discussed. Sometimes when you're reading stories about Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, that's when you get to learn about how he treated his wives, and and that's when you see the finer details of the nitty-gritties. But where there are set in stone and where there are explicit guidelines about how to care for the emotional side of things, and it's really ever there. There's just so much, you know, as I said, it's so mechanical, and I think that people go into, and I saw a post the other day where somebody was saying that, you know, you shouldn't get married for love, or, you know, it shouldn't be about love. And for me, I'm sorry, maybe it's because of the way that I see marriage, but for me, I was a bit disturbed about that you go in there for family values and to protect your lineage and for establishing an empire and all these sorts of things that are great to, you know, to look for in a partner or a spouse. But love for me is the emotional side. It doesn't have to be this airy-fairy romantic ideal that we see on television, obviously. But if I go in with the intention for, you know, of love, it comes in with the emotion, respect, listening, empathy, care, all of those things. You know, if all of these, the empire that you're building falls apart, and if somebody falls ill in the marriage, if that happens, and all these other circumstances or conditions that you came into, if those things fall away, then you know that, you know, the choice that you are making to go in and love that particular person will hold when all of these factors change, because an individual changes so much in a relationship and in a marriage that if you came in for looking at those particular conditions, but then as soon as that condition, you know, changes, then your role and your purpose and your reason for being in that institution falls away as well. And then what happens to the whole institution? It falls away.
Absolutely.
So I think one of the reasons why these gender wars occur, as we stated in the event, is that we come in with these ideals. We're not receptive to change or hearing any other opinions. We're not coming in with the possibility that I might have been wrong about a particular perception, and we're not willing to compromise. And, you know, that word has caused a lot of people to shake a bit. Compromise. Why should I have to compromise? These are my ideals. I've communicated them before. And even if you did communicate your ideals before, but you have to be open to the possibility that it might not work out that way. So now we're stepping out of, okay, so it's the conversation that, you know, I really, you know, would love us to touch on, that what happens in the household now the couple is there. I think that's where the gender war starts before we're looking at the wider society, even if it is impacted and influenced by.
Yeah, because it starts from home, it starts from upbringing.
Definitely. A strong family unit builds a strong society, right? But it takes very strong, grounded individuals to build a strong family unit. And that's why
what does a grounded person look like? Sorry to come in. I just wanted to know. And I think when I kept asking these questions last week is because I wanted to get to the foundation. What does a grounded person look like? And then how does that filter into the marriage and the structure?
A grounded person looks like someone who is well established in their sense of self, to the point where they don't feel easily attacked the moment someone disagrees with them. So the one thing that is underpinning all of the things that both you and Apafrana and Fatima, the audience member, that pointed out and touched on, is that the ideals that we're looking for, or not even just the ideals, just the practical side of what would make a marriage work. The thing that underpins that is that you have two people involved who are both not insecure. You see, because the one thing that comes up often in these discussions, and we touched on this at the beginning of our conversation today also, is that women wanting to be independent of a man, men wanting women to be dependent on them. And we need to question, why is there such a big focus on dependence and independence? And both, as much as the one might seem better than the other, the independence appears to be like probably the better option than the dependent side of it. What's the truth behind it is that the moment you focus on dependence or independence, you're in a defensive state.
Yeah, true.
Right? Because the one that needs it to be dependent,
you're already within the... Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry. So the one that needs the dependence, and this is usually where men are positioning themselves, which is much to their own misfortune, I would say, is that if you need a woman to be dependent on you, it means that you have no reason to believe that who you are is enough for her to want to be with you.
Sufficient. True.
Right? And if a woman wants to be independent, then she's already got one foot out the door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or tying her camel.
Exactly, right? So we need to be careful about how we approach these things, because the moment, and just to come back on the other point that was raised as well, and I know we're very limited for time today compared to we had on Saturday, and even Saturday last week we ran out of time as well. But I want to try and keep this as focused as possible, right? The other issue that always comes up, and that's why I'm always averse to entertaining or encouraging discussions about the Sunnah or the Sharia or rights and responsibilities, is because we have got it down to an absolute fine art, probably even more to a level of detail and exhaustive kind of understanding beyond even what was available in the first 3 generations after Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, about the Sunnah and the rituals and what's right and what's wrong and who's right and who's wrong. So that isn't the problem, because that if that was the issue, our problem would be solved by now. Because there's millions, literally like thousands and thousands of books published about the pious wife and the pious husband. Obviously, there's more publications that read about the pious wife than there is about the pious husband.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
Right, and things like that. But the reason why these things are not helping is because we've lost the character of the Sunnah. And I don't think we can ever emphasize this enough. It's the character of the Sunnah that we ignore when we focus on the rituals and the rights and responsibilities. So when we talk about like what it is that men should be able to expect or demand from their wives as far as intimacy is concerned, because he has a right. At the same time, we also need to look at what is it that the wife has a right to as well, in how she's being treated in that moment of intimacy. But more important than
100%,
both of these things, is about the willingness and the desire and the interest and the inclination and the commitment and the conviction and all of those wonderful things to want to be intimate in the first place. It's not a matter of satisfying lust. It's a matter of companionship.
I hear you, Zaid, but now we're looking at it from an Islamic perspective, where you read hadiths about a woman being cursed throughout the night until the morning if she refuses. But then do you understand where some of these problems come from? Yes, that might be a hadith, and that might be true, it might be authentic, but what happens beneath that? Yeah, what's the context? What happens before she refuses? I mean, this is a place where we're supposed to find comfort within each other, and probably the reason why a lot of people get married in the first place. They get married so that they can, as Fatima said, to make this halal. And then, I don't know, years or months down the line, now that reason for marriage is not even being utilized. And then you find these hadiths about, oh no, you're gonna be cursed all night until the morning, but nobody is speaking about why did she refuse? Why is she getting to that point? Because we're not talking about the emotional side of the intimacy, and why women want to even be intimate with a man in the first place. It's really about the physicality of it. It's more about the emotional safety that we feel in that space.
Yes.
So when we have these conversations in our spaces, in our religious spaces, when we go to these conferences, before my first divorce, I used to go to these marriage conferences because I was trying so hard to save the marriage. But I was realizing that the conversations, I wouldn't come out of it feeling more empowered. I'd come out feeling fearful. Oh, I'm not doing this right. And, oh, I'm not pious enough. And, oh, I shouldn't refuse this, that, and the other. But we didn't go back to the basics. Why did we get married? What type of mentality did I come in with? Am I even emotionally stable enough to carry this huge responsibility of this marriage? And am I mature enough to understand the person that I am married to? And are they mature enough to understand me?
Yeah. So there's 2 things I want to comment on here. The one is just on your last point about, are you mature enough in that? And this is something that is quite a contentious issue, right? Because you don't know what you don't know. So to kind of expect people to always be competent and present and aware and all of that before they enter something is somewhat unreasonable. However, what we need to be better at as individuals is we must be able to allow ourselves to be wrong, to learn, to get things wrong and to learn from it and to improve on it. You see, that's where the insecurity issue comes in. Because if you're insecure, about yourself when you enter that space, the moment you get something wrong, it feels like an attack. And then you go into defense mode, and then you resort to fatwas, and you resort to hadiths, and you resort to rights and responsibilities. But
but how many 18-year-olds are mature? How many 18-year-olds are not feeling insecure? How many people got married at 18, 19, and 20, not truly knowing themselves? And it's something that you learn only when you go through some things, that you have a better sense of self, and the insecurities start to fizzle out. I mean, we know if you're going into late teens, into your early 20s, there's so much insecurities that you have as an individual because you haven't really established. Sorry to come in there and say that. Sorry, you were still speaking, but I just wanted to make this point. You're still learning who you are, and then only later do you realize, this is who I am. This is what this is what I agree with. These are the ideals that I want to attach to. These I don't want to attach to at all. But an 18, 19, 20-year-old man or woman coming into a marriage don't have that. Very few do.
Right. And that's why I keep highlighting the fact that before a marriage fails, the support structure fails the couple. Because you cannot expect newlyweds to understand the full intricacies and the demands of married life. And that's the whole point of parenting. And that's why parents who make statements like, once they're married, they're no longer my problem, A'udhu billah, you really need to rethink that. Because you never stop being a parent. The whole value of being a parent is the fact that you always one massive life stage ahead of your children, and you are there to guide them and to support them so that they can grow into the best role that they're playing in society, in the family, in their family unit with their partner. And we don't do this. We don't build each other up. We're always looking to see who's right, who's wrong. So that's
100%. And just sorry, I'm gonna break you up there because I was speaking to this very young I'd say young man. He's married, family member, and I posted something online, and he responded to it, and he said, I don't even know what was my question. I think I said, I think I asked the question, are men do men perpetuate themselves onto other men the same way? I think you saw that, right? And he said men should fear, it is best if men build themselves up to the point where other men fear him. And I thought to myself, and I was like, I guarantee you that when you're 30 or 40, you're not going to subscribe to this nonsense because you're only 20 something and you're saying these things. But listen, I'm I take you like my young brother, and I'm going to always be there to correct you and stuff like that there. And I hope that when people see this this video and they see this Zoom, if they have young married children, please, and I urge you, please do not for 1 second, like it says, do not for 1 second think that your parenting stops the minute you get your children married. It does not stop. Because remember, we as parents, we're definitely getting wiser as we age. We're learning things, and we're always learning. I can't even say that when I'm 50 or 40, if I ever live till that age, or 60, I'm going to stop learning. I think there'll always be life lessons, and obviously I'm there to share them with the younger ones. So if I'm going to say it's no longer my responsibility, then what? That's such a massive disservice to our younger generations and to our children.
Yes.
So, and you're right. You're absolutely correct. When a marriage does fail, it does reflect on the peers. It does reflect on the parents. It does, because why were they not the steering factors of their relationship? Why did they not? And I can't say carry it, but why did they not sort of guide it, assist it, give it the foundations that it probably, because like Dineo says, you really, I think even in my 30s, I didn't know things that I knew now. Up until I was a mother of two, I still didn't know things, and I look back and I think, oh my God, I was a mother of two and I was still thinking, and I was still making so stupid decisions. And I mean, I think I even had that conversation with you, Zaid, and I said, there's so much of things that I regret that I did in my 20s and even
Right.
up until my early 30s. So
Yeah.
how are we even expecting our youngsters when they're entering marriages? And I don't even call them men and women. I still call them youngsters. Like if they're even 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, right up until they're still youngsters. How are we expecting our youngsters to know things and to
Right.
navigate through marriages? They don't. They need their parents. We definitely need to be emotionally accessible to our kids, even though they're married.
I just want to come in on this point because it relates to something else I wanted to mention earlier as well. And that is that the focus is so much on what it is that we're doing that is counterproductive to what we're trying to achieve with the other person, right? Like with parents also, when parents go through those later stages in life and they now become grandparents and they think that it's their duty to just spoil the grandkids and that's it, and they don't have to be involved in how their children conduct themselves as adults in that marriage. That is the furthest thing from the truth, right? But apart from the obvious about that, what we fail to realize is that every single one of us, every life stage, that's our first time we're going through it. That's our first time we're experiencing that life stage. And just because we surround ourselves with people that we feel more confident about how we've arrived compared to where they're still at, like for example, our children that might be now in the marriage phase and raising kids, and we're sitting back and thinking, yeah, now you can feel what I felt like and all of that, and now you know what you did to us and all of that. The point is that at that point, when parents see
makes
that
sense to them.
yes, but
Yeah,
parents at that point need to take on the role of recognizing what kind of a support structure are they providing as grandparents, as for starters. And secondly, when they see their children treating the grandchildren in a certain way that might be harsh or might be extremely strict or unhealthy in the way they're approaching problematic behavior, that's where grandparents or the parents need to speak to their own children who are now the adults in the marriage and let them know about what actually worked and what didn't work and what they regret about the way they raised their own children. This is where we need to allow ourselves to be wrong and to acknowledge what could have been done better so that we can get the next generation to do better than us, not to compare
But
ourselves.
how many parents, how many women or men say to their parents, I'm not like you, or they completely disregard the advice from the grandparents, or let me do this my own way. I'm not like you did this, but I don't prefer this. And now there's this new age, sorry to call them this, and it's probably just fix the term. Everybody's a therapist now. That's what I've picked up. A lot of people are into, there's so, like, you log on and everyone's got these, this is your inner child and how you were supposed to nurture the inner child, and this is how you're supposed to parent, and there's gentle parenting, and then there's this parenting. So now I'm gonna completely ignore the advice that my mother gives me and rather log on to social media and take advice from somebody that I've never met a day in my life because they are licensed and my mother is not. So it also comes down to the young parents. Are we even willing to listen to our parents when they come with advice? Or am I going to take advice from somebody that I absolutely don't know? But I just wanted to ask a question now. May I ask something? Sorry. And this is directed to both of you or the three of you that are here. I hear you saying that before the structure falls apart, it's the parents or the immediate support structure that has failed first. But the conversation that we have not had is the issue of compatibility. Sometimes it might be that both support structures are really strong and they try their level best to help this young couple or whatever couple, young, older, whatever you might call them, stay together. But you find that within the marriage, you only know that you're not compatible with the person once you're in it. You come in with these airy-fairy ideals and it looks beautiful from the outside, and then you go in and you realize, okay, this is not what I was expecting. And we're just not compatible and we cannot fix it. And the longer we stay in it, the more harmful we are towards each other because we're just not compatible.
But hold on, slow down. All right. There's so many things that I need to respond to. I don't think I'm going to remember half of them. Compatibility, the moment you're going to trust yourself to make a determination about whether you're compatible or not, you're automatically assuming that you have the level of awareness and maturity that's needed to make the marriage work in the first place. Secondly, the compatibility issue is extremely subjective, and it's also subject to how much it is that we understand what drives that apparent incompatibility in the first place, right? Because how often don't we go through life and we think, well, yeah, no, this just doesn't serve me right now, and this is not talking to my higher self and all of that. And later on, we look at ourselves and we think, damn, what were you thinking, right?
Yeah.
That's like so juvenile or so whimsical or something, and we judge ourselves for it. So we need to be careful about giving into that. The other point I want to mention, and there's 2 points, so please let me just get these out of my head before I lose it.
Okay, we're quiet.
I think I just did. Hold on. So, what was it? Okay, let me go to the one that I can still remember. There's always this focus on the fact that we can demand our rights. And this one, what I want to say now is more directed at men that, inshallah, will come across this recording. And that is that we're so focused on the fact that I have rights and you will be cursed if you turn me away, and if I go and try and fulfill my needs somewhere else, you're going to be accountable and all that. For starters, that's absolute rubbish. Because if you're going to fulfill your needs somewhere else, that's on you, it's not on anyone else. You can't blame your wife for it. You need to understand why it is that the state of your relationship with your wife is in such a state that you have to actually demand your rights to be intimate with her rather than because she wants to be willingly intimate with you. That's the first thing. The second thing is that the man needs to understand that by demanding his rights, he himself is denying himself the absolute joy and comfort and companionship and intimacy of actually being intimate with his wife. Because then she served the purpose. Powerful. He got over his moment of lust or need, and done. Turn over and fall asleep, or go and shower first and fall asleep, whatever the case is.
Yeah.
The point is, when we talk about rights and responsibilities, we completely lose sight of exactly what it is that was intended to fulfill us. And fulfilling rights and responsibilities is not fulfillment of the self. It doesn't feel like something that you connect with and that it gives you a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose or anything of that sort. It just means that you ticked off something off your list because you needed to get it out of the way so you can continue to remain functional in the rest of your life. In all the other domains, in providing and in nurturing and cooking and whatever it is that you guys need to do.
Yeah,
right?
Function. Yeah.
So we're so focused on function that we've lost sight of the actual essence of being with a partner. And I'm thinking that brings me back to the other point I wanted to make, which is that I lost it again. You guys are just dominating the discussion today. Okay, inshallah it will come back to me.
A proper gender war.
Gender
and I'm
wars.
not talking so much.
But seriously, and I think maybe if I just look at the comments quickly, it's so when we talk about this issue of the reasons for getting married and how it is that the support structures fail us. Oh yes, that's the point I wanted to make. When we look at the interaction between the elders and the current generation of parents and then the younger generation that's now stepping into that space and all that, and we think, well, why is it that they dismiss the value of the elders, or they dismiss the advice that they're being given because they're looking for this licensed kind of thing, right? And then they're rather going to refer to internet memes and so-called gurus who share content who have absolutely nothing in common with our value system.
Sure.
The real problem, or the real question we should be asking when we get to that point, is why is it that the elders haven't established themselves as more influential and respected in the lives of those people? It's not always the only one direction. It's not just because the children want to be disrespectful. Yes, you'll get the rebel that will just refuse to acknowledge anything, and sometimes you can't get to it. And this is evidenced by that story of was it Khidr with Musa alayhi salam when he killed the young boy, and when he was asked why did he kill the young boy, he was told that because he was going to grow up to be a tyrant, right? Even though and his parents were pious. Were pious people. So there are times when you will not be able to guide every child. That we have to accept. But it doesn't abdicate responsibility for trying.
Yeah.
So when we find that the young ones are not listening to their elders, we need to first ask, why is it that the elders haven't established a healthier relationship that is more conducive to that kind of respect in the first place? And secondly, if they don't, the elders should know better than to abdicate responsibility for anything going forward, because that's the whole point of parenting. And anyone that's parented teenagers will know this. They go through the insane moments all the time, and you need to be waiting for them on the other side of that insanity so that you can course correct with them every single time until they get past that phase and they can and they start connecting with the value of what you're trying to teach them. And this is why, as a parent, I always remind myself and I always remind parents that if you see something in your children, and remember, your son or your daughter is always going to be your son or daughter, no matter how old they are. That's why it's like really amazing sometimes when you see these stories of an 80-year-old mom with a 60-year-old son, and or a 90-year-old mom with a 70-year-old son, and things like that. They're both elders, but the one always remains the child of the other. And for that reason, as a parent, if even at that age, if you see your son behaving in a way or your daughter behaving in a way that's untoward, you need to remind yourself that your job as a parent is not yet done. You don't wash your hands of them. That's not how we are a support structure. You're a support structure through everything because you want what's best for them, because wanting what's best for them gives you that sense of inclusion and fulfillment and the rewards that go along with it to be that support for them. And that's how you build a strong ummah. You don't build a strong ummah, a strong community, or a strong society by abdicating responsibility because I paid my dues. Now it's my turn. I need to worry about myself. Now I need to live my life. This is a completely unhealthy and unnatural way of looking at life. The communities that are strongest and the people that are healthiest, naturally healthy, who don't need all of these superficial kind of supports and aids to maintain their health, are the ones that have the strongest family bonds. And this has been scientifically proven as well. So we need to seriously take a step back and consider, every time we have a lot of these discussions, it's always focused on one direction only. And often it's focused on the person who feels aggrieved and who's been oppressing them or abusing them or treating them badly. We need to look at it from both sides. And when it comes to children who are disrespectful to their parents, you need to understand that they didn't raise themselves. The parents raised them with those values, even though it wasn't intended that way, but the way they conducted themselves, that's where the children picked it up from. Because like we always remind ourselves, children don't do what you say, they do what you do. So from that perspective, and that right there is what establishes the basis on which we have adults that grow up to have a healthy self-esteem or an unhealthy self-esteem. And if they have an unhealthy self-esteem, that's where we start having all the problems in relationships and marriage. And that's where we start resorting to rights and responsibilities and fatwas and all of that. The moment you're bringing in rights and responsibilities and fatwas into your discussion with your wife, you've lost the plot already.
And then I think just, incorporating that whole, when Dineo asks, when a marriage does fall apart, do we just automatically allude that blame onto the support structure that first failed it? So, we have to look at the fact, what efforts were made to assist that union. If all efforts were made on both sides, including the couple, including the support structure, and if it still failed, then it boils down to qadr. And this is how we as Muslims now incorporate our beliefs and our trust and our reliance upon Allah, because there's no sense, us navigating through all of these things and, mental health issues, if we don't gain strength also from our how can I say, our reliance and our connection and our relationship with God first. And then we understand that, sometimes we've got to go through life. Allah will put us through tests. Allah will make us go through experiences to make us better people. And, I know personally, I don't know if I've ever said this publicly, but yes, definitely, I've questioned, how did I get divorced? Because I made the istikhara. It was positive. It was a go ahead. But how did I? And then it just boils down to the fact that it was meant to be. My marriage wasn't possibly meant to last. It was only meant for that much amount of
For
time.
that
I was
season,
then
yeah.
meant to enter a different phase of my life. I was then meant to experience this. And alhamdulillah, and I look back at it and I look at the person I am now compared to the woman I was in my marriage, and I much prefer the woman I am now to the woman I was in my marriage. And I'm not saying that I'm thankful for my divorce, but I'm definitely thankful for every experience that I've had in my life. So it's not necessarily, you know, something when we go through something difficult or something that's negative, you know, that it's perceived as a you know, where we look for a blame game, and this is generally what we also tend to do. We love to blame each other and stuff like that there. But accountability and blame is two very different concepts, and I think that's something that we also need to talk about. But yeah, you know, this is something that, you know, you take your lessons and you say, look here, I know what I did wrong, I know what I did right, where to from here, what are the lessons that I take to from here. And at the end of the day, Allah knows best what is best for us at the end of the day. No matter how much we try, no matter how much we do, no matter how much efforts we put towards something, if it's not meant to go that way, it will not go that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I suppose the one sentence that I would say in order to sort of bring the conclusion of this conversation is to say that it really starts at home. I think the minute we have to start establishing stronger, more intentional forms of parenting, more intentional forms of marriage, and why we get married in order for us to establish stronger societies and communities and stronger marriages. Because as you said, it starts in the household. If I'm not raised in a particular way, if I'm not raised with particular values at home, if I am nurtured, even if it's unintentional, to be disrespectful or disregard my parents' experiences, if I'm going in with preconceived ideas that are negative, then it will affect the marriage. And I resonate so deeply with what you've said, Abba Farhana, when you speak about you much prefer the person you are coming out of that situation. It's not that you were thankful for the dissolution of the marriage, but it's the lessons that you had coming out of it, and what you will not accept anymore about yourself or other people, or whatever. If you go into that space again, you know just where your boundaries lie. And that's very important, because a lot of us come into marriages without having any boundaries whatsoever, because we're being so heavily influenced by everything and everybody around us that we forgo the essence of who we are. So speaking as a as a young person, you know, this conversation starting from last week was very fruitful with both of you, and I took so much away from it. You know, I took away, and then I tried to see now, who am I now in the space? Am I still continuing the same mistakes that I did in my first marriage? And I mean, within my 20s, I got married, divorced, and remarried again. So things have been happening very quickly. But that is my qadr, those were my choices. And I found that I am more functional within a marriage. And obviously, I have my own reasons for that than I am when I'm alone. And, you know, that will come with its own reasons and upbringing, and, you know, maybe some insecurities that I might have had as a single person. But yeah, I think it starts at home, and it all boils down to that. How was I raised? What am I doing in my next space? What am I expecting my child to be like when I get to a point where they are a teenager, or I have to marry them off? So yeah, thank you for the conversation. It's been powerful, fruitful. I still have a lot of questions though. I think I have more questions than I have answers.
And that's good. It gives us more material for future discussions. But I just want to respond to a couple of things quickly before we wrap up, because we only got 4 minutes left. And I see there's a comment from Fatima saying, elders, you say elders to support, and then we're told not to share this with them, but we are to work on it ourselves without outside influence. And again, this is a reflection, and this happens often. I agree with it completely. This happens very often, where we mustn't allow outsiders to interfere and all that. But that's a defensive approach. And again, what we need to recognize in that is two things. Firstly, that we've established cultural norms that suggest that this is the way to deal with your problems, because you must keep your izzat in your home, right? You mustn't air your dirty laundry in it. Now, here's the thing. If it feels, or if it turns out to be an exercise in airing your dirty laundry when you confide in people that are supposed to be confidants in your support structure, then you need to start recognizing what is the problem with your support structure. And you need to recognize for two reasons. One, so that you understand where you can go to for sound advice and where you can't, right? You need to be more selective about the advisors you choose. And secondly, if you find that your support structure is lacking in that way, you need to most importantly understand how that would have affected your perspective of how to deal with things. Because if your support structure was lacking in the way you were raised, you have to then be even more open to learning a better way than what you assume to be the best way you know already. You can't, on the one hand, judge your support structure for being inadequate, and support structure most often turning out to be your parents and siblings. You can't, on the one hand, judge them to be inadequate, and on the other hand, assume that as a result of you growing up in that inadequate environment, you know it all. That's like hypocritical, right? And it's very opportunistic. So we need to be careful with that. The other thing that I just want to bring in here also is when we start talking about qadr and taqdeer and things like that, we must remember that it is tie your camel and trust in Allah. Tie your camel and trust in Allah. So as long as you are competent in tying your camel, everything else you trust in Allah. And when it comes to things like istikhara, because it comes up very often, it's come up very often with a lot of people recently in my discussions with clients, is that too many people use istikhara because they're looking for a sign on whether they should or they shouldn't. That has never been the intention of istikhara. The very meaning of the dua for istikhara says, if it is good for me, you can't get to a point of asking Allah if it is good for you if you haven't done your due diligence about what you intend to do in the first place. So istikhara is saying, Ya Allah, I've done my bit. I've applied myself diligently, and I've put in the effort to do the right thing in this thing, to tie my camel. But if doing this is not good for me, then you make it, then you take it away from me. Or if it is good for me, then you make it easy for me, right? So,
but let me jump in here, right? Let me jump in here very quickly. Exactly what you just said. Your istikhara says, if this matter is good for me, then grant it for me, right? And
it
say your marriage ends, okay? And you turn out to be a better person from that divorce. Was that matter not good for you?
I'm coming to that. I'm coming to that.
Exactly. Right. I absolutely agree with you.
That's exactly where I was heading with this, right?
Allah granted you exactly what you asked him for.
Hold on.
Yeah.
So istikhara, I always equate it to the equivalent of a driver's license. When you get your driver's license, you don't expect not to smash your car just because you've got a license. Yep. If you're not conscious and capable and competent and present when you're driving your car, you will smash it. Then you can't say that your driver's license is to blame because they said you can drive, but you can't drive, so they're responsible, right? Secondly, and by the same example, if someone smashes into you, you can't blame your driver's license for that either. By the same token, you are not responsible for whether someone else is as committed to the relationship as you are. We all have our own priorities that are determined by how it is that we feel about ourselves and our surroundings and upbringing and everything else, right? But here's the thing. You will never be held accountable for how someone else might have been obstructive or destructive in you trying to make a marriage work. But what you take from it is on you. So that's why, in your case, Farhana, you can you've decided to take what the best from it so that you could build yourself up to be better than what it was, and you are willing to acknowledge what you could have done better as well. How many people lose themselves to the anger and bitterness of divorce because they are so focused on the fact that they were done in, that they were betrayed and they were treated badly. Now those people are not using the divorce to be better than who they were before that. So we can't say that the divorce was intended, was necessary for you to be a better person. No, it's what you take from it. That's what makes the difference. And that's what you're accountable for. And that is what determines your qadr. Otherwise, Allah would not hold us accountable for our actions. He gave us limited free will because how we respond to what happens that is out of our control, that we can't influence, how we respond to that is our accountability. What we do with it is our accountability. How we choose to interpret the reasons for it and how and whether it builds us up to be better or worse, that's our accountability.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
that is an individual choice that is made based on whether you value yourself or you are more driven to wanting to get even because you were done in.
Yeah, well, you know, like I said, and I said this even at our event, it takes a lot of work. It takes, I don't even know how long to get to a conducive and effective level of self-awareness to the point where, you know, it actually starts benefiting you. You must really, really want it. I know, I mean, I'm not going to say, listen, I was like this from the onset of my divorce. I definitely became destructive. I was definitely angry, bitter, all of those things. But I hit dead walls with all of those emotions, and it just wasn't benefiting me. I was going nowhere with that slowly. And eventually, I think lockdown, and maybe this is why people should know why I sit on this panel with you continuously, and why we actually, you and I interact. When the lockdown happened, you started that 21 days to live. And I was like, look here, if I'm not going to start something like this, yeah, I'm going to go cuckoo sitting in this house, because I know I was already off my head after my divorce. And I just sat there, and, you know, every day, 7 o'clock, you used to post videos, and I was sitting there, whether I understood what you were saying some days, most of the time I didn't. And it was just that, oh, this is very different. This is different. This was more a lot of critical thinking, a lot of self-introspection. And what I took away from that was, what do I want for me? Forget what I'm getting from everyone else, because that is generally what happens when someone goes through a divorce. You know, we want everyone to come together and give us things that we are lacking. And when we don't get it, we just become even more resentful, even more angry, instead of saying, how can I pick myself up? Because if I'm just going to keep running to people, it's pointless, because when there's no people, what am I going to do with myself? And so when that started changing, when that self-narrative started changing for me, that's when I saw a difference in my self-awareness. So it takes a lot of work. I'm not going to even lie, and I'm still working on it every day. There's you know, every day I question myself whether I've got what it takes, and you know, you deal with me. But yeah,
it's a lifelong effort. It's a lifelong effort, and that's one of the things we should never ever do, is think that we're going to apply this effort and then we're okay and then we just live. It's a lifelong effort, and you must be invested in yourself and in your life, with your partner, with your children, with your family. You must be invested in that, because Allah would not make it so important if it wasn't something that would make you feel a real sense of fulfillment and sweetness and joy in this world. We need to stop this dunya and akhirah conversation. In this world, Allah has created things that will make us feel fulfilled and make us feel the sweetness of life now, so that we can turn to Him in gratitude, so that we can earn our stage in Jannah. It's not about sacrificing everything now.
Struggle also with connecting with our deen is because we're so used to be, we're taking instruction. Do this because it's right, don't do this because it's wrong. But instead of saying, wait, I don't want to do this because how does this make me feel as a human being? That is disrespecting myself. If I lie, why am I lying? Because what does it say about me? So that self-introspection is very, very important. But like I said, a lot of people don't have that guidance. That's because, I don't know, we just don't have, I don't know if we're just not talking about the importance of self-awareness, and again, of mental health, and how important it is that you do need mental health, and that is how it's actually going to even assist you with the way you connect with your spirituality. I don't know if we're not doing enough, but we're trying.
Apologies, I hadn't prayed my asr. I jumped on here quickly because I was running around. I really have to get going, but this has been such a beautiful conversation. Yeah, thank you so much. Sorry to cut you short, but I really have to go.
No, this conversation can go on all night if we allowed it to.
Yeah.
So no, we have to cut it short. Jazakallah, Fatima, for joining us as well, and for both of you, as always,
Fatima.
you guys must always keep me on my toes and keep me honest, and we'll do the same for each other, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. And
Hana, can we ask for a closing dua, please? We start in the name of Allah, we close in the name of Allah. Can we ask you to make a dua, please? For us,
You asking
inshallah.
me to make a dua? No, Zaid should make the dua.
why should I?
I think Zaid, you the odd one out, Zaid.
So because I'm the odd one out,
See, we
Yes,
all
you can
women
be
here,
the
we're giving
you can be the
platform to
rose,
make a
Zaid
dua.
will be the thorn.
Yeah.
one thing, there's always more thorns than one rose. So anyway, seriously though, I think dua takes on different forms. And I think one of the things that we need to recognize is that our very presence here and our effort towards this understanding, inshallah, that is the greatest dua that we can make to Allah to make this easier for us and to guide us along this path, so that we don't create new fitnas out of this, but instead we try to resolve the fitnas that have been causing so much problems around us. The one dua I always remember, as far as possible, whenever I'm faced with having these kinds of discussions or meeting with any clients as well, for that matter, or anyone for that matter that I'm hoping to advise or take advice from, is the dua of, I believe it was Musa alayhi salam. It is the dua that says, Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. So may Allah open our minds, open our hearts, open our chests, so that we not only think clearly, but we also receive the wisdom that we need, so that we don't ever feel as if receiving advice is an attack against us, is attack on our esteem or on our ego, and that we must be driven through sincerity and conviction in everything that we do, inshallah. Ameen. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad wa barik wa sallam. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.
Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.
Ameen. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.